Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is the First Amendment Defense Act that we discussed yesterday, and I move passage.
Mr. Turner, for what purpose?
The gentleman yield for some questions.
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Happy to yield.
The gentleman will yield.
Thank you, Representative Krause. There's some questions I wanted to visit with you about yesterday, and we ran out of time on your layout, so I want to take the opportunity today. I wanted to talk about the section of, or ask you about the section of the bill that appears to be a reference to House Bill 89 from the 85th Legislature, that, quoting from the court opinion about that bill recently, prohibits boycotting the state of Israel as a condition of public employment. Are you familiar with the language I'm referring to that's in your bill?
Yes.
Okay.
House Bill 89 didn't ring a bell, but now that you've read that, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And that is what House Bill 89 did, right? It prohibited boycotting the state of Israel as a condition of public employment. Is that
That's right.
a fair assessment? Okay. So my question is if someone were to boycott Israel, is that not an action as defined in statute and in your bill?
Well, the reason we included that is Representative King had done a really good job last session to bring forward the policy concerns that if somebody were to boycott Israel, then we did not want to have governmental money. We didn't want to use those funds. We wanted to make that discretionary decision. So once we had this bill and it looked like there might be a conflict between those two things, we asked that that be included, or Representative King asked that that be included in the legislation, and we included it there.
So it would be a conflict because your bill prohibits a government taking an adverse action against someone for expressing a particular viewpoint, but House Bill 89 explicitly enables someone to take that action? Is
No,
that with respect to the state of
Just to be
Israel?
clear, I'm not saying that I do think it conflicts, but in case that ever arose, we wanted to explicitly state that there was no conflict. So that's the reason we added that portion in.
Okay. So if House Bill 89 deals with actions, how does it square with Senate Bill 1978's supposed limitation on adverse government action based on affiliation or membership?
Well, yeah. Yeah, I do what? Yeah, I would say in one hand, what you have is the state's ability to have discretion over how it spends its money, what the economy is, international relations and discussions. You have that on one side. The other side that we're seeking to remedy in Senate Bill 1798 is a constitutional right that we want to make sure that we protect. So that's, again, the state can choose to, I mean, we're dealing with the budget right now, right? Yeah, we're talking about how we're going to spend our money with the discretion of which departments we're going to fund, which agencies we're going to fund, which programs we're going to fund. So we make those kind of discretionary decisions all the time in terms of economic terms. You can't have those discussions on the constitutional rights of Texans. So we want to make sure that we protect those. And again, we want to make sure that Texans do not get penalized by the government just because who they're affiliated with, who they donate to, or their support of certain religious organizations.
But your bill prohibits adverse government action based on affiliation or membership. So in the case of if someone were to be aligned, affiliated, or have membership in a group that decided boycotting Israel was part of what they wanted to do, in this case, the government explicitly shall take adverse action against them. Is that right?
Yeah, and again, I think as Representative King has brought out when we were discussing this, you have two different things. One is economic, as we just talked about, which is just discretionary part of the state, and the other is religion and religious organizations, and that is a constitutional right. So again, the state is able to pick and choose what it wants to on economic policy, those discretionary ideas, but you can't pick and choose when it comes to constitutional rights, and we want to make sure that we protect them.
Well, is freedom of speech not a constitutional right?
Yeah, but the state is allowed to determine how it spends its money.
The state is allowed to regulate freedom of speech?
It has nothing to do with that, Representative. House Bill 89, which I believe was unanimously passed by this House last session, had to do with, do we think that the policy of those who are boycotting Israel, is that a good place for the state to spend its money? Is that a good economic policy to do to one of our bidding trading partners? As Representative King just brought up, there's terrorist organizations, and we've done that with Sudan and other places. So it's really nothing new that we've done there. What we wanted to make sure, again, just so it's clear in statute, I'm not saying that they are conflicting, but just to make sure that it doesn't, we wanted to make sure that we put that provision in here so there's no conflict at all. And again, I keep going back to the fact that the state can make those economic determinations, they can make those economic decisions, and you can agree with that, you can disagree with that. What we saw last session is that the unanimous support of the body agreed with that. And even this session, when we had to come up and do some cleanup language to House Bill 89, I believe there was no opposition in the House on that bill, and it's already been signed by the governor this session.
But you are aware, Representative Krause, that bill has now been ruled, it's still in the courts, but has been ruled unconstitutional for the time being. Judge Robert Pittman writing that SB 89 threatens to suppress unpopular ideas and manipulate the public debate through coercion rather than persuasion. And whether you agree with that legal opinion or not, or that ruling or not, does that not essentially, putting this exception into your bill, doesn't that prove that the bill is actually about protecting conduct or actions based on a subjective religious test?
I think whenever we do public policy, we want to make sure that you're not doing anything that goes against other public policy that this House has approved and this legislature has approved that seems to have near unanimous support. And so I think it's always good to be careful when we're doing that. And if there can be any question of conflict, then we want to make sure that that doesn't arise. And that's why we put that in there. Again, one has to do with the economic issues, and the state has the ability to decide how it wants to spend its money and how it wants to go about these trading relationships and even a national security issue in terms of those trading partnerships. But we can't negotiate away, or we can't decide or have discretion on how we're on constitutional rights. And what we have here before us in Senate Bill 1978, again, I'm not as concerned about the court case for HB 89, but what we have here in front of us in Senate Bill 1978 is to ensure that the government will not penalize somebody just because of their affiliation with, donation to a religious organization, as we've seen in San Antonio with the city council denying a contract to Chick-fil-A because they happen to donate to the Salvation Army and the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And even in all the debate and everything that was said yesterday, I did not hear one person stand in support of the actions of what San Antonio had done. I didn't hear anybody try to justify what had been done to Chick-fil-A in that instance. And because of that, I think we're all on the same page that the government should not be doing that, which is why I think Senate Bill 1978 hits that sweet spot. And I
understand, Mr. Krause. I just think that there's a real inconsistency between the government saying that you can't take an adverse action against a company ostensibly because of religious beliefs, which I don't think that really is the case, but different topic. But in the case of BDS, the government not only can, it shall take adverse actions against individuals. So I think that's the inconsistency.
I understand that you see it's inconsistent. I don't. Move passage.